to Consciously Healthy. I'm Laura.
And I'm Claire.
And today we are talking about something that has been in the health news recently, and that is the connection between chronic fatigue syndrome and leaky gut.
Ooh,
you saw
lovely.
This article somewhere, didn't you?
I did see this article somewhere, and I can't remember where it was. It was either the Paleo Mom or Authority Nutrition on Facebook. And I found it very interesting because I've had IBS since I was 15, and I've had chronic fatigue since I had postnatal depression after my daughter. So I was very interested in this particular study.
So what are the symptoms for chronic fatigue syndrome?
Tired.
Full stop. But it's more than tiredness,
Yeah,
isn't it? It's such a deep bone tired all day. And
it's a bit like waking up every morning with a bit of a hangover. Like you can't, some days everything just looks a bit blurry. Like I'm just, the main experience, and I know quite a lot of my clients say this is when it's bad. I'm actually pretty good at the moment. I've been pretty good for a while, but the days where it's bad, it's like I'm not in the world. It's like I'm literally, it feels a bit like I'm in a big spaceman's helmet and the world's happening around me and I'm just kind of watching it. Really interesting.
And leaky gut, symptoms for leaky gut would include bloating, wind, again, tiredness because you're not digesting. What is leaky gut, first of all? It is, so primarily we have the stomach, which is responsible for starting to break down our foods. And then when our foods are ready to be absorbed, it comes into the small intestine. And this is primarily where we get leaky gut, is in the small intestine. And it's where the gut becomes damaged and food particles leak into the bloodstream. And what can happen with leaky gut is because there is elements of particles of things that shouldn't be in the bloodstream, the immune system is triggered. And so it's really, really common for people who suffer with leaky gut that they suffer with digestive problems, particularly above the belly button, but they also have immune conditions. So that could be autoimmune, that could be psoriasis, that could be constant infections, it could be hay fever, allergies. So it's very, very common with leaky gut.
Oh, thanks. I just learned something there.
Oh, great.
So it's really interesting because I'm really passionate about IBS and bowel stuff. But whenever I hear the word leaky gut, I go, oh, I can't bother to listen. So I've just learned something there. And it must be a total resistance because clearly, as the scientific study would have said, I must have had leaky gut to have developed chronic fatigue. So, thanks.
Absolutely.
Clearly it's my resistance. It's like listening to you going, it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
So where does leaky gut come from? It's very common that it can kick off with something like a gluten intolerance because gluten, the way that it works in the body, can start to damage the small intestine. And so if you're eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of gluten-rich foods, that the small intestine just cannot cope with it and starts to become damaged. So yeah, that's a common. Oh, stress is another one. Stress, and I mean, if you look at where chronic fatigue sits, it's a very endocrine, hormonal based, and we see a lot of connections between digestion and hormones.
Oh, even before the study, I've never, ever, ever worked on a client who had something like ME, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. Apparently, they're all the same condition, but anybody who's experienced, they're different. They are different, whatever science says. I would never say that I have ME. And, fibromyalgia, apparently, I can't remember, I think ME is the British term for fibromyalgia or chronic, I can't remember. But I just feel like there are actually three very separate conditions. Fibromyalgia is definitely, very pain-based.
Yeah.
Chronic fatigue is the exhaustion. And then ME is both.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
That's not a medical definition at all.
There's still a lot of confusion around the labelling of these different kinds of conditions.
And actually,
because we don't, the medical profession don't fully understand.
No, they don't. And as they say, it's a non-diagnosis. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. So they will have literally scanned you for everything else before they come up with and usually what they would, what they tend to label you with is ME. But it's because they've got nothing else to offer. So with all of those symptoms, there's nothing else that they can, so it's a non-diagnosis. Interesting.
How do you treat leaky gut and if you have chronic fatigue syndrome? I saw something really, really lovely on a website that I want to share. So the first thing you want to do is remove the foods that are causing a problem. You can look at food sensitivity testing if you're confused. A couple of the biggies would be gluten, wheat, sugar, milk, possibly dairy. I'll probably go as far as dairy, especially if there's some immune symptoms going on there.
Although for some people with leaky gut, cheese actually works quite well. So it's really worth having the food sensitivity testing because it might be more milk than cheese or yogurt.
Absolutely. And I would also say eggs can be quite a problem with people with leaky gut. Particularly it's the egg whites that can cause a bit of an issue with the small intestine lining.
Yes.
So the first thing is remove. The second thing is to replace. So make sure that you are putting nutritional dense food into your diet.
Lovely.
So that is organic vegetables, that is good quality happy meat, that is
non-farmed fish.
Yeah.
So wild fish.
Things like bone broth, which are really rich in healing amino acids, are really recommended for things like leaky gut as well as autoimmune. So if you've got the two together, I think that bone broth is a great way forward. And if you are not digesting your food properly, we would recommend a digestive enzyme. So there's a couple of different routes that you can go down, and maybe we do a podcast on digestive
Lovely
enzymes.
idea.
I reckon we could talk a lot about that.
Yeah, we could.
So you're looking at either the enzymes or the acid, and
or a combination of both. Absolutely,
dependent on your symptoms and depending on what you need. So first remove the foods, then replace it with the good stuff.
You're about to go into supplementing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, go on.
I didn't know if that was part of replace.
Yes, go for it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because also something that we work with a lot is L-glutamine.
Oh, this comes into repair.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, we'll go into repair then.
Yes.
I don't want to ruin your alliteration.
I know. I found a really good sort of little pathway with this. So there's also another R, which is reinoculate, which we've got a bit of an issue with this because this looks at things like probiotics. And probiotics can be fantastic for people, you were saying earlier, particularly around if there's been heavy antibiotic use, we would definitely be recommending a probiotic. But a lot of people who suffer with leaky gut have issues digesting.
And IBS. And if it turns out that IBS is connected to leaky gut, which it particularly if people, I would struggle to see how it couldn't long term. We've both suffered with IBS since puberty. So, I'm in my late 30s. I was about to say late 30s, almost 40s. Good God.
Easy tiger.
Late 30s, almost 40s. How could it be that if my bowels have been that sensitive for, the majority of my life that I wouldn't have leaky gut, IBS? There has to be a connection, has to be a correlation.
Yeah.
Can't remember where I was going with that. So but people with probiotics. So people with IBS often don't get on well with probiotics.
Yeah.
And that goes against a lot of standard nutritional advice. That's just in our clinical experience.
So probiotics is definitely something that you could explore.
We're not allowed to call them probiotics anymore, the EU said.
What can we call them? Friendly bacteria?
I don't know. I think we have to just literally call them Bifidobacillus and Acidophilus.
Okay. Right, mental note to self. An alternative that you can look at rather than the Bifidobacillus acidophilus, which just rolls off the tongue, is fermented vegetables.
Lovely.
And I think you've got a little video on how to make fermented carrot.
There is on YouTube. There is a brilliant video on how to ferment vegetables.
So easy to make yourself because you can buy a big tub in the health food store, which costs you about £5, or you can grate your own carrot and stick it in with some water.
Kiln jar and some water and a bit of salt and
a bit of vinegar.
About 30p.
Yeah, so that's
cost you more for the kiln jar, which you'll reuse.
Yes.
So that's definitely worth it. A lot of people ask about kefir, and it's hailed as an amazing health food. I have concerns around kefir actually because it's milk and grains, and again it could be quite sensitizing. You can make it with water. In fairness, personally, I'd go more down the fermented vegetables route.
Absolutely. So that was reinoculate, and then the fourth one is repair. Which go for it. How do you repair leaky gut?
So repairing the gut. Okay, so my first port of call is L-glutamine, which is an amino acid building block which actually repairs the gut.
Which is a supplement.
It's a supplement, and you can get it in powder form. So if you sort of do quite a lot of sort of smoothies or bone broth or whatever, then you can add it in to that. Or when I'm feeling lazy, I just take it in capsule form. And L-glutamine's amazing. It's not one of the supplements when I take it I go, oh, this has changed my life. It's like not when as soon as I take it. It's if I stop taking it, about 3 weeks later I go, oh, what happened to my bowels? They've just gone all crazy.
Yeah, I've had that experience.
Amazing.
I really, really like L-glutamine. I've tried many, many different supplements, and some things like the acidophilus. I can feel quite windy, bloated, uncomfortable with, but L-glutamine I always have a good time with.
Yeah, good time. So bone broth.
Bone broth is a great one.
And
we talked about enzymes.
Yes, digestive
so again,
aids,
that's going to be
enzymes.
about repair. And if you can get your digestion to work better, your small intestine to absorb better, then the rest of your body will be able to work better. So your endocrine will become more balanced. So I think whenever I see someone who comes with chronic fatigue syndrome and leaky gut, I work on both, but getting the leaky gut under control can have some huge impact on the health. And
I guess it's part of remove, but really knock out sugar. Sugar is just, it plays havoc with a dodgy bowel.
This has been a big one.
Yeah, good follow. That's meaty.
We'll talk about leaky gut again, I'm absolutely sure of it. But that's a really good introduction to leaky gut. And yes, that's it for today.
Subscribe and we'll see you next time.